So welcome everybody to the second hour of Mind Shifters Radio. And today is Monday, October the 18th, 2021. And our call-in number is 563-999-3581. And press 1, and that puts you into queue to talk to us. We'd love to hear your comments and your questions because that makes this your show. And what Dr. Tim was talking about, he had asked me if I could check on a MP3 that he was having challenges getting it to download. And so I had worked on it, didn't have any success with that. And then I was saying, just say a prayer that the rest of this vacation goes better. We got here after a crazy drive with crashes and traffic and construction, and it took us about an hour and a half longer to get here than it should have. And we've got my 89-year-old father with us, and so that was a little bit challenging for him. But then we get here, and they tell us to park our car and text our name to a certain number, and that they'll let us know when it's our turn to come into the lobby. And I appreciate that they're being cautious and everything with COVID and stuff, but we sat in the parking lot for almost 2 hours, and then finally got to check in, and they had messed up our unit. And then when we finally got into our unit, I unlocked the doors and turned on the lights and went back out to get my dad, and the door shut behind me and locked, and the key was on the table in the unit. So I had to call security to come let us in. When we finally did get in, and we ate dinner like at 9 o'clock last night, and we were midnight getting in bed, and then my dad decides to come in at 2:30, and then at 4, and then at 5, and so now he's sleeping, and I said I'm having to restrain myself from going in there and waking him up. So worksheet material. So far the vacation has, I said if it goes this way, I'm going to have a vacation to get over it. But anyway, so we welcome you to the show. And while we're waiting on Michael to get dialed in, I will invite you to our website, which is whyagain.org. You can click on the Start Here in the upper left corner or the bullseye in the middle of the page. Both of those take you to the same place, and it will give you plenty of information of how to get started doing the forgiveness work. So I invite you to go there and check it out. And like I said, we are on vacation, and I was just, before the show started, talking to Michael and suggesting that probably for the next 2 days, I will get Dr. Tim to play a pre-recorded show so that we can, hold on a second. Are you dialing? Okay. So that we can concentrate on getting a few things done. It's grandparents' vacation with myself and Michael and my dad, and then also Gabby, my daughter-in-law, her parents. So it's time when we're just all doing grandparenting things and working around the radio show, and then the times that they have activities and things going on. It's a little bit of a crunch. So I'm probably going to have him play a show for the next couple of days. And welcome, Michael.
Thank you, dear heart, and welcome, everybody. Delighted and honored that you're here with us today as we get to play with first century Aramaic forgiveness and all of the correlated ideas that come along with it that reach into just about every corner of human endeavor and existence. And when we talk about human endeavor and existence, we're talking not about what the average person calls the human experience, because in many cases it's not human. What we're looking to do is to engage the experience of functioning as love, functioning as the created essence that we are, and extending that essence into literally everything that we touch. If you go back to that creation story in the ancient scriptures, they talk about how we are made in the image and likeness of love. And my offering is that love is human life. Without it, we're not human. Hold a newborn child. Think about the moment when you held that newborn. tap into the essence of that newborn and what you have. You have the direct experience of conscious, active, present love. And notice that the newborn isn't loving you. The newborn is love. Now, Plato said, let me define the words, I'll end the argument. And Vladimir Lenin says, if you want to destroy a culture, change the meaning of its words. What if love is not something we do? What if it's what we are, period? And if we're missing out on an experience, what do we do about it? Well, there's a great line in the Course in Miracles that says, you need not seek for love. You need only seek, find, and release the barriers that you built within yourself against it. Now, the release of those barriers in the ancient Aramaic language and in the language of the Course in Miracles is forgiveness. The Greek culture turned forgiveness absolutely backward, and in so doing, turned human life absolutely backward. People say things like, well, I did that terrible thing. I mean, I'm only human. No, if you're a human, you couldn't do that terrible thing. It wouldn't be possible for you to do that. It's in those non-human states that seem to live in us, but really aren't alive at all. They're just replicates. You know, in many cases, I think they're just a playing out of little bits of waste genetic material that's floating around in the system and happens to come into resonance and action within us. And that internal resonance, the action of moving an energy at a stronger amplitude than it was previously, called thinking. And they follow the guidance of those so-called thoughts. But it really isn't thinking. If I say, don't think about the color of your car, when the color of your car pops into your head or something about it, you can't call that thinking. Because it's not. It's resonance. It's a movement of energy under a law of physics. And thinking is the ability and the action to, when your mind is playing out one of its replicate games, introduce something new to the mind. Send it in a different direction. Do something completely and totally new with it. So we're here to support moving life in a different direction than what is becoming all too obvious is an anomaly, this rampant rage and fear and attack and disregard for others, disregard for self. Time for us to wake up, to recognize who we are as human beings, and then to function out of the human part of our nature. The part of our nature that is not human, in the ancient teachings, was the part that we were told by the man named Yeshua, in order for you, being human, to live, you, non-being, non-human, have to die. It's ridding ourselves of that non-being self. And the dynamic that runs the non-being self for most people happens or takes over even against one's own will and choice when one is under stress. And the stress is a result of the increased movement of energy within the structure. And the prime mover of energy in the structure, the gatekeeper, so to speak, of perception that keeps certain energies moving and other energies blocked, is our goals. That's why in the Aramaic language, the forgiveness process has to do with the canceling, the identification, and the canceling of goals. When we're in upset, when we're in pain, when we're in trauma, it's because we have committed to, for ourselves or for someone else, a goal, something we want them to do, or something we want from ourselves, or something we want from the world. You'll notice, unless you're just a generally miserable person, that you're pretty okay with pretty much everybody until somebody isn't fulfilling your goals. And, we've introduced this idea of the power person. And the power person is somebody who, three factors. I repeat this often because it's one that you have to, you've got to get into carbon-based memory in such a way that even carbon-based memory reminds you, oh, this might be a power person issue. So, if you could say about your power person, my power person was, quote, always, unquote. Well, if your power person was always angry, because anger is an anesthetic, that means your power person was always in pain. If they're always in anger and always in pain, then probably they were attacking you constantly, or whenever that anger came up. And the way we know that is because anger, instead of being a feeling, is actually an anesthetic, an internally produced drug to anesthetize against pain. When you understand that someone who's angry is in pain, unless you have energetic dynamics within yourself that react to pain, to anger, then you stand at the space of compassion and healing. If you say, my power person was always afraid, then you know that fear is at the root of their behavior. If you say that my power person was always sad or sorrowful or grieving, then you know that what was going on in your power person's life was that of loss. Your power person was always controlling. Then you know that your power person was constantly in a state of insecurity. If your power person was always in a state of superiority, I am the best of the best, and had some sort of untoward emotion that went along with it, then you know that what was underlying the power person dynamic was inferiority. If your power person was in hate, then you know that underlying it is the rage driven by the pain they've not resolved within themselves. If your power person was always in escape mode, got to get out of here, then you know that underlying that dynamic was terror. If your power person was always in disapproval, then you know that in the unconscious part of themselves, the way they thought about themselves was through self-deprecation. If your power person was always in leaving mode, then you know that what underlies that leaving mode is that of fear. Now, when a child especially, and the power person dynamic can be instilled in a person's mind at any time, at any age. 3 factors are needed. 1, person has more control over your life than you do. 2, they are not functioning as love. And 3, you as the object of whatever the energy is that's going on with them, perceive the circumstance as survival. In that survival state, the barriers are down, thinking or reasoning is out the window, cut off totally from being where reason is, and one simply becomes like a giant sponge, just absorbing everything in the environment. That is the inventory of the way the interaction was between yourself and your power person. Then in the ultra-stressed mode, and if your power person was always ultra-stressed, then you know that they were always attempting to achieve more than they could. They were in that overachieve mode. And as those things occur, then what you can anticipate is that under a great deal of stress, the thing that brings the power person mode, at least the most destructive part of the power person mode forward, is when you become ultra stressed. There are only 3 behaviors possible in that power person mode. 1, when there's no stress, and each mode depends on the level of stress you're under. If one is in a place where there's little or no stress, then they will tend to do what they did to get along with their power person. If stress starts to build, the automatic decision system, a part of the mind, will kick in and force them to do what they did to resist and survive with their power person. And it's not unusual to have more than one power person, so there may be several of those dynamics going on simultaneously when one is under stress. And then when one becomes ultra-stressed, they'll do what their power person did to them that they hated the most. So what you can expect is under stress, if these are the states that your power person had, then you'll tend to be forcing yourself to go into that overachieve mode. The mind will tend to serve up fear that seems unresolvable but is totally forgivable. The burden that a person in that mode will put on themselves with self-deprecation, the put-downs of self, will be just unbelievable to listen to the words that come out of their mouths, and even more shocking if you're able to look at the thoughts that are running in their heads. In that ultra-stress state, terror will become the root of the output of behavior if rage isn't the operative mode. And they may switch off at a second's notice. The rage being the cover for the terror. In an ultra-stress mode, that inferiority that lends itself or has itself looking like superiority. What is truly superior is going to be in a centered, connected space, not afraid of everything that moves. Under stress, when that power person dynamic, once it's been installed with in the mind, there's going to be insecurity And the behavior that will go along with that will be the need to control. The same way as when inferiority comes up, the game will be, I have to prove that I'm superior. If there's loss, then sadness, sorrow, and grief will tend to take over the mind when ultra-stressed. You say, well, how come I roll along and everything's pretty good? And, gee, I don't even know what happened. All of a sudden, there's just this sadness and this sorrow and this grief. Well, take a look at and recognize that the counsel we're offering is, if you're ultra-stressed, it's because you've got too many goals running. You'll notice the forgiveness process has at its core the canceling of goals, because goals determine the quality at any given moment of the output of the mind, the quality of perception, which are the very dynamics that we're talking about. An ultra-stressed state, if you go into pain, literally people have physical pain, and they don't understand why, but then they are not willing to look at the fact that there's fear going on inside of them, and they're using anger as a way to defeat the fear or to anesthetize against the fear, and then they wonder why they hurt. If your power person was always, then recognize that these were dynamics that were instilled in you at the very earliest stages of life. In most cases, not always, but in most cases at the very earliest stages. And so they're far, far from memory. How do you recover the memories behind those things and let them go? Well, there was this genius mind 2,000 years ago. His name was Yeshua. He was not the theologian that most people want to present him as. He was a physicist. He was a psychologist. He was a geneticist. He was a physiologist. And so when he presented these ideas, he was presenting a way not to achieve some sort of religious objective, but a way to return to the truth of who we are as the active presence of love. And so forgiveness became the core tool for removing the dynamics that had been instilled that were unlike love, primarily addressing the power person dynamics. Now, unfortunately, much of his teaching was brought to us by those who did not understand the core of the teaching. You know, Paul is held out as the supreme example. And yet, when he tells the truth, he's in as much massive confusion as anybody else. You'll remember he says when he comes across those situations where he's ultra-stressed, he's in his power person dynamic, and he says, why is it the things I would do? Like, I know in my head, I studied this, I know in my head that this is what I want to do. Why is it the things I would do, I cannot do? And then in his muddled state of mind, he confesses, the things I hate are what I do. Now, you've got to remember who Paul was before he became Paul. What was he? He was, in essence, a hired religious killer. He went out and found people who went against the dogma of the authorities today, who were riding high off the backs of people's wealth and power. And he had those people stoned to death. He had them killed. That's some pretty heavy-duty power person dynamics. So it doesn't surprise me in the least. Yeah, I don't recall exactly how long a lifespan Paul lived, but the majority of it wasn't working with the teachings of Yeshua. Now, I've spent the last 50 years consciously, purposely working to understand those teachings and bring them into the world in a way that they make sense. And they don't make religious sense. They make sense where you live, where you work, where you experience your life. And I know that, my confession, 50 years later, I'm still doing my work. Again, I don't remember exactly the time frame. Jeannie might know offhand. But it doesn't shock me in the least. This Paul, who never met Yeshua, who ran into his work as an adult and had to have some horrendous power person dynamics within him in order to take on a job of killing people for their religious beliefs. I mean, that's pretty heavy-duty stuff. So, has he reached into the depth of what drove him to do such a heinous thing as kill people for their religious beliefs? I mean, literally have them stoned to death? You know, in stoning people, one of the things they would do is they would dig a hole and they'd bury them to a point where they could not get out. And that's the posture from which they would stone people. Where do you suppose your power person dynamic was? If that's what you decide is going to bring you the joy of life, and that's how you're going to earn your living. Whew. That person's going to have to do some pretty darn deep work. We're inviting you to do some pretty blessed, deep work in order to look at, and you'll probably never have to face anything, although who knows what's in the genes of any and all of us. What kind of dynamics are there? I know that in one of the tools we teach is the tool of still point breathing. And one of the still point sessions that we did, Jeannie and I, she was supporting me this goes back several months ago. And I was shown the genetic dynamics of pain from within my own bloodline. The Native Americans understood the generational aspect of things when they went into a healing ceremony, a sweat lodge. They used the term, a term to create a space of opening, and the term was Matakwiyasan, which meant for all my relations. And in this particular still point session, I was shown a visual. And the visual had me looking down, so I'm looking within myself. And I can see these like unfathomable, uncountable number of small lights. And each of those lights was surrounded by darkness. And the instruction that came with it was, these are my generations. Am I willing to become the space that embraces that darkness? And the number in the bloodline was uncountable. It was just like, and the sorrow and the pain and the trauma was just beyond calculation. And was I willing to be the space that could embrace that energy and process through it, allow it to come up through me, be exposed to love, and be processed out? You'll remember that our definition in this work of processing is the ability to keep love conscious, active, and present when something less than love comes up. What does each of us carry around in our genes? Well, here's how you tell. And when I say that, I mean in terms of the work you really need to do. Just watch your own mind when you're ultra stressed and what comes up for you. You know, we see people turn around and kick the door or kick the cat or beat the child or beat the spouse or rage at the boss or I know Jeannie and I, one of our favorite pastimes to take an intermission from the work and life is movies, films. We'll each just shake our heads when we watch somebody who, they've got one of their own possessions in their hands. They go into a fit of rage and they destroy it. It's like how bright does somebody have to be to take their own possession, their own, maybe even their own bodies, and because they're in such a fit of rage, they turn self-destructive? What kind of a power person dynamic is there? And, you remember, maybe there was a point where you said, from now on, I am going to treat myself lovingly, gently, and with respect. If you've made that commitment and you've gone against it and done something of a self-destructive nature, why? Where did the pattern thinking come that has you do any behavior that's less than love? Somewhere along the way, somewhere in the bloodline, that dynamic was installed as a power person dynamic and became something that just went along with the flow of passing on genes. The ancient scriptures stated was, look to the lives of the fathers, for ours are but a shadow of theirs upon the earth. If you don't know what your generations were about, the fathers, just watch yourself under stress, you'll know exactly. And then take the tools of forgiveness and everything that correlates with it and put it to work. If you haven't used those tools yet, you can go to our website, whyagain.org. And we have done everything we can possibly do to make those tools available. Everything conceivable. So if you go to whyagain.org in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see a link that says Start Here. Click that link, and it will start to open links. It will take you through, walk you through the whole process, including radio shows where we've walked somebody through the whole forgiveness process step by step by step. So you've got, at least 18 or 20 instances of full radio shows where either Dr. Tim or myself or Jeannie has walked somebody through the whole forgiveness process step by step. So you've got full instructions there, and the worksheet is on the website. You can do it live right there on the website. Or you can print the worksheets off, so you print them off on your own printer and do them at home. Or you can go to your app store on your phone, and in the app store, type in whyagain.org. WHYAGAIN. It's like the title of my book. Why is this happening to me again? The first word and the last word of the title. as one word, whyagain.org. That's our website. And then when you get to your app store to download the app where you can do the forgiveness process right there on your phone, type into your app store Heartland, one word, Heartland, Aramaic, Aramaic, forgiveness. When you type that into your app store, you'll be looking at Jeannie's genius piece of work on the step-by-step process of forgiveness. The world's only forgiveness app. There are two different versions of the forgiveness process, the forgiveness worksheet, reality management, because what it's about is changing and managing the realities output from your mind and removing from underlying part of the mind, the place where most people don't look, the place that Paul was inquiring about. Why is it the things I would do I cannot do? The things I would not do are what I do. He was inquiring of his own unconscious mind. If you do things you'd rather not be doing, you need to be inquiring of your own unconscious mind, because if it weren't in there with the impetus of some form of hostility or fear, you wouldn't be doing it. And if you're doing it, it's because it's there, and it can be removed. I don't care what it is. Self-deprecation, self-destruction, the need for anesthetics, whatever it is. All it is a construct of your mind. God, if Paul had only known that and been able to teach it to the world, how much suffering, how many lives could have been saved? Here's what I know. You and I share a heritage. We're human beings. We are quite literally made of the stuff called love. We need to know that about ourselves, and then begin to chip away that which is not love. There's a story about someone who approaches Michelangelo, and he's looking at the statue David, and he just marvels, and with that awestruck look on his face, he turns to Michelangelo with the question of, how did you do that? And Michelangelo said, in the piece of marble, I looked and I saw David, and all I did was chip away everything that wasn't him. That chisel and hammer are the process of forgiveness in the human realm. If there's anything that drives you, anything that irritates you, anything that pains you, it is an energetic dynamic held in your mind, probably from the generations, perhaps inquired in your own early life, especially if we don't remember where it came from. And now you take out the hammer and the chisel. Now, you can bet that the first time that Michelangelo decided to put a hammer and a chisel to a piece of granite, probably didn't turn out a David. He probably did a little, to turn out a David, he probably did a lot of training and totally destroyed a lot of chunks of marble. But here's the beauty, the resilience of the human being who is love is incalculable. And every little piece of hostility or fear that you chip away from your mind will be another space where the presence of love expands into expression, each designed for that. The breath is one of the key processes in the tool. We remind you and invite you to just keep awareness of your breath and what's happening with it. Forgiveness is a tool of removal. It has nothing to do with what the Greeks taught us about letting other people off the hook. We're here to teach that lesson. We're here to learn that lesson. We're here to learn to wield the hammer and the chisel skillfully as David did, and wield that hammer and that chisel on our own internal dynamics, the generational patterns that most people never even become conscious they could possibly change. Most people are still living, if you can call it that, wandering in the desert in a state of unconsciousness, running their mouths according to what has gone on in the generations, and thinking that's life. My offering is, that's not life. Life doesn't show up until that goes away. And forgiveness is what makes, it's just like looking, somebody like David could look at the piece of marble and, he can visualize David in there. Or somebody like Michelangelo. The average person can't look at their lives and visualize something as awesomely perfect, beautiful as David. Because they're shaped by those generational patterns. But the thing to get is it's there. Whatever the external granite looks like, however craggy, however many cracks there are in it, how many imperfections there are in it, whatever. Start working with the hammer and the chisel. And you are a David. This school of thinking is about supporting you, uncovering, and in very real terms, not Sunday morning stuff, but in very real terms, where you live, where you interact with other imperfect people, and where you create your life. We're here to support you, creating a work of art. And we're here each year not to replicate what's gone in the past. The hostility and fear game is nothing but replication of the past. Just playing the past out over and over. Oh, give me an anesthetic so I don't have to feel my pain, the pain of my generations. In many cases, it's not even your pain. But it's now part of your piece of granite called your body-mind unit. And that piece of granite is energy system that is designed to be molded and shaped at will. Sadly, most people have not yet met will. And we're here to introduce you and to support you until you develop that faculty of will so powerfully that you do the work of creating a masterpiece of your life. That's the only thing you're designed to do. And as the masterpiece begins to emerge deeper, and the capacity for deeper and deeper levels of instruction to be heard will increase. So please pick up the hammer and the chisel. Pick up the tools. Download the app. Start to use. There are two different versions of the forgiveness process. There's a simpler worksheet and one that's a little more complex that you can use on the phone. There's a copy of the commitment, which is a personal code we suggest you start to engage in and work toward manifesting so that it becomes first nature to you. And there's also a thing called the Dragon Klingon game for introducing kids to forgiveness. And thank you, Jeannie, for your awesome skills at having created that and gone back not too long ago and done a renovation of it so that more tools were added. And I'm sure there'll be another point where we'll add another set of tools to it as we fleshed out and are in a position to be able to afford to do what it takes. And speaking in terms of that, especially with the fact that now we're not on the road traveling, if this work has benefited you, we invite you to support us, and whatever support looks like from whatever level of financial means you have. Might be pennies, doesn't matter. It might be just passing the tools on to others. But if you've benefited from this, we invite you to offer some input to support us in carrying it forward and expanding it around the globe. You can do that easily by going to our website, whyagain.org, and you'll see a donate button there. If you just click on it, you can donate. Or, maybe you speak a language that we don't have the book translated in. Maybe that could be your contribution, because it wouldn't really be a contribution to us, because the translations on our website, I can't read them. They haven't, served me in that way. But it could be a contribution to everybody in the world that speaks the language that you speak, that would have the refinements and the understanding if they could read the book in their language. And if you happen to do that, it'll be on our website free, like the rest of the translations, except for the Swedish one so far. We were blocked by the Swedish publisher from doing that. Perhaps there's a skill that you have that you could offer in support of us taking this work on a wider scale around the globe. I don't know, but whatever it looks like, if it's appropriate. If it's not, that's okay. Carry on. We're here to support you. Call in every day, ask questions every day, download. I think there are about 20,000 pages on the website. Go, please, download them all. Put them to work. And we've always got more to come. We're working. It kind of feels like, it's like it's just begun, and we're just getting ready to massively move out and open up things on another level with the work of forgiveness. So we're delighted at this opportunity to interact with you. And we are down to, about 12 minutes or so. So we do have time for a conversation or two. Miss Jeannie, do we have anybody in the phone queue with a hand up, or anything happening in the chat room?
No, it's all quiet on this end. And, you've not read from the book yet, but I will throw in I thought Friday, Michael did a why workshop for the first time in a while for a
that was fun.
A divine science conference, ministers conference, and I queued in on another phone. That Michael was upstairs in the office doing it, and I was downstairs with Dad, and I had it on my phone so that he could hear it too. And so when he got to the part of going through the worksheet, then I walked Dad through doing a worksheet. And he gave me his answers. And, it's like you started this show out talking about that a lot of things often began as a child. So here Dad's going to be 89 years old next Monday, and his worksheet was on his older brother getting him in trouble when he was a child. And he still carried that frustration.
Let's add a piece to the puzzle so people comprehend this on a different level. And at 89 with Alzheimer's, he can be sitting at the table and he doesn't remember whether he took his vitamins or not, like 45 seconds later. And yet he listened to the workshop and did a deeply powerful worksheet. And, honey, I don't know whether you share with everybody when you open the show that we're on the road. We actually have a timeshare, and our daughter and son are off at a conference, and so we have Aria Rain, the baby, and are with the other set of grandparents in a timeshare up in the Shenandoah Valley, and we packed the car up. And as we were finishing our greenhouse so we could get away, get the plants covered up and protected from some cold weather coming in. It's going down into the 30s this week while we're gone. And so actually at this point, sweetie, in unpacking the car, I haven't located the book yet, and I had put Dad's worksheet in that book. I plan to read it, but go ahead. Excuse me for interrupting you.
No, that's fine. And I think I saw the book, so I'm walking that way. But anyway, yeah, so, he still remember the issues of, when he was a child with his older brother.
We'll cover it tomorrow.
Anyway. Okay.
was profoundly powerful to see him, or to read the worksheet. After I finished the workshop, I was kind of surprised she had assisted him in doing this worksheet. And at 89, and I mean, he's never, oh, look at that. She put her hand on it. Thank you, Jeannie. So, Jeannie's dad's name is James Blaine. Everybody, when he was a kid, called him Blaine. So the worksheet he did using his name as a child, although now if you ask him his name, it's Jim or James. He says, I, Blaine, am love. The object of attention is Bill, who was his older brother. And this was actually an issue that Jean's dad and I were sitting at the kitchen table back about maybe 3 months ago, and I was just asking him about his life and, childhood and such, and instantly up came Bill, and Bill was the troublemaker in the family and was always getting him in trouble. And so the object of attention is Bill. In the event he's doing this worksheet over is he wanted me to go to the river. And it's interesting because this is exactly the same situation that came up about 3 months ago. Where, this is a man at 89, and he's lived a lot of life, had 4 kids. But over a period, like literally, he can't remember from 1 minute to the next. He'll get up and it's like, well, Dad, it's time for you to go and shave. And the bathroom's 25 feet away, and the bathroom door is 25 feet away from the kitchen table. And he'll take 4 steps away from the table and stop and look at Jean. Now what am I going to do? But about 3 months ago, he brought this situation up about his brother forcing him to go to the river, and here he is 3 months later doing a worksheet on it. Alzheimer's, my offering is, it's a way to escape from realities we don't want to deal with as his dementia. So his feeling over his brother kind of forcing him to go to the river was frustration. And the thought was that we're both going to get in trouble. And what he shared with me about 3 months ago, as we were just sitting talking, was that his brother was always getting him in trouble. And if you knew Jeannie's dad, I mean, he is the gentlest, sweetest, easiest to get along with person that I've ever known. He's amazing. Goal. So as he started to look at this situation with his brother, is he felt like Bill, and this was the theme of our conversation a few months ago, was always getting him in trouble, that Bill didn't respect him, and so his goal was to be respected. And he canceled the goal. Jeannie prompted him to cancel the goal as we're going through the worksheet. They're listening on the phone to me doing this workshop live. And then he asked Spirit for assistance. And he says, I feel more neutral. That was the result of canceling that goal, that he was neutral about this issue. And obviously, at 89, if this is still coming up, in 2 conversations over a period of 3 months that we approach, what's going on for you, Dad? It's pretty much on his mind. So what he was able to see as he canceled that goal, what became apparent to him, and the idea when you cancel a goal, even if it's for something wonderful, is that the goal is what drives perception that, if filled with pain, will collapse when you cancel the goal, because it's the goal that drives the process in the mind. If you talk to the modern day psychologist, most often they'll tell you that 90 to even as much as 95% of our mental processes are unconscious. So of all the mental processes going on, what brings certain features, certain things to the surface to actually formulate our perception at the moment? What brings the perception of an older brother and his frustration, his anger, his irritation at an older brother? was always getting him in trouble. What brings that to mind after, he's now 89, so I think this event, when he shared it with me, he was around 8 or 9 years of age. 80 years ago. What has it so on the surface? He's still holding a goal to be respected. So when you cancel the goal that brings up pained perception, that pained perception collapses in on itself. And when it collapses in on itself, it gives you access to that hidden part of the mind. So his insights were, what he saw about his brother that he had not seen before was that he didn't respect others, including their father, who Gene's dad had a lot of respect for his father. So he saw that it wasn't just him, but it applied to everybody, and he hadn't realized that previously. And then he stepped into processing other times in his life where he felt people didn't respect him, that he could see that he repeated this pattern with others. It was just, I sat and read this. It was like, whoa, when I first read it, Jeannie handed it to me, and I didn't really realize it was about them. When she explained it, it was like, wow, when I think about what he opened up to me just a few months earlier about his brother and always getting him in trouble, it's like, this is a profound piece of work for this man at 89 to be able to do. And then he set a new goal toward Bill, and that was to let him do what he does and to do it without me, to let go of the feeling of pressure around his brother and be relieved of and allow him to do what he needs to do. Somehow I suspect if, in another week or another month or 2 months or 6 months from now, a conversation comes up with Dad about issues in his life, he won't be bringing his brother up again. It's kind of like when you do forgiveness, it's like he's let go of the relief valve that's kept this issue from early childhood becoming a dominant feature in his mind 80 years later. If there are things from your genetic history or early childhood that have become a dominant feature in your life, let off the valve. Here's how you do it. You identify the goal that's driving the perception that carries the pain, and you cancel the goal. And when you do, and you ask that power that resides in you to assist you, the valve that forces you into behaviors, circumstances, situations, self-assessment that leaves you in trauma, feeling like you need something outside of you to make you whole. It opens and moves monumental levels of energy. Miss Jeannie, any other thoughts for you? Thank you for handing me the worksheet.
You're welcome. No, I can't think of anything. We're down to just over a minute.
Yeah. Okay. Any other thought in regard to Dad?
The only other thing that came up is that, and Bill probably didn't get in trouble as much as Dad did because Bill had epilepsy. And so, he would have seizures and things and got by with, I think, probably more.
Oh.
So he wasn't punished as much.
I didn't know that.
And of course, Bill's not in his body right now, so yeah.
Yeah. Good chance that was Bill's adaptive mechanism to avoid getting into trouble while he goaded others to getting into it. Interesting. Well, breathing with Dad. And everybody, we appreciate you for being with us. Create the best year out of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift to give the world. The world needs it. You can give it. Blessings.